The year was 1492. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel had decided to support a voyage overseas for a new route to India in search of spices. Led by the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, the Niña de Pinta and the Santa Maria set sail from Palos de la Frontera, Spain. They were looking for a faster route to Asia in order to gain access to the world of riches described by Marco Polo. Columbus arrived to the Caribbean and explored the region in 4 voyages. In his second voyage, he arrived to Puerto Rico. What would result of this expedition in 1493 is an encounter between 2 cultures that became a turning point in the lives of the Taínos of Puerto Rico. The Taínos lived a simple lifestyle that would eventually change with the Spanish arrival. Taino, meaning good men, was the name given to this group of Arawak descendants that settled in the Greater Antilles, originating from Venezuela. The island provided them with plenty of resources. From the palm trees, they would make their tools, canoes, and bohío dwellings. They used fibers to craft clothing and hammocks, plants for medicines, stones for jewelry, and carved religious symbols. Agriculture provided a wide variety of crops, including pineapples, maize, sweet potato, and yuca. Women practiced agriculture, while men fished along rivers and off the coasts. Taínos had a polytheistic life, worshipping Jokau, the supreme creator, and lesser divinities called Semi. Women and men had definitive roles in society, yet they had equal rights. The head chief of a tribe was called the cacique. Below them were the ni Taínos, which were warriors and shaman. After them came the naborias, or common natives. They lived close to the river in small villages called yucayeques, where they lived in round-shaped bohíos. They had ceremonial centers called bateis, where they practiced batu ball games and religious ceremonies. In these bateis, petroglyphs engraved in stone were found, revealing the complexity of this culture. However, the colonization of Puerto Rico was a major turning point in their lifestyle. Columbus first arrived in the West Indies. He was amazed to encounter the Taínos. He described them in his journal as of short stature, with long, lustrous black hair, tan skin, and healthy, robust bodies. He called them Indians, believing them to be natives of India. These were the first people to feel the devastating effects of this New World encounter. In 1508, the Spanish would eventually set up the second colony of the Americas, which they named San Juan Bautista, known today as Puerto Rico. Seeing the Spaniards, the natives fell in awe, believing they were gods from the sky, and granted them with many gifts. So at first, the relationship between the two was fairly good. Spanish conquistadors, on the other hand, saw the natives as primitive. In their view, Taínos' humble nature made them natural servants, as written to the Queen by Columbus. Eventually, the thirst for gold and their duty to evangelize damaged the relationship between the two. The relations deteriorated as new settlers began to arrive and implemented the Encomienda system. The royal decree of 1503 ordered Indians to convert to Christianity, work in the mines and fields. According to the decree, every cacique had to acquire a number of Indians that they shall appoint to work and pay a salary. Under this system, a landowner would have 1 tribe under his command, and the cacique would oversee the labor. The natives were taught the Spanish language and evangelized. The once powerful cacique was stripped of their political position, since the encomenderos now exerted absolute control over the Taino tribes. Entire families were torn apart as a result. With this new system, the Taínos had to abandon their way of life forever. In addition, the Encomienda system set the stage for continued exploitation and mistreatment of the Taínos. The Spaniards worked the Taínos tediously, leaving few to harvest their own food, causing starvation and famine. Their wages were minimal, and many were worked to death. In many other cases, women were raped and mistreated. As a result, many of the natives preferred to commit suicide instead of dealing with this harsh way of life. The Dominican friar Bartolomé de las Casas dedicated his life to defend the Indians. In Brevísima Relación, de las Casas describes the Spanish colonists as gold seekers and warlike conquerors. The reason for killing and destroying such an infinite number of souls is that the Christians have an ultimate aim, which is to acquire gold and to swell themselves with riches. He dedicated his entire life to the protection of the natives after seeing the brutality committed towards them. This genocide and abuse of the Taino marked a turning point in their way of life by sparking an attempted revolt against the Spaniards. In 1511, the Taino joined forces under the cacique Agüeybaná II against the Spanish people and their property. Governor Juan Ponce de León counterattacked and offered to pardon those who gave up their weapons. Those who refused to comply were ordered to be killed without mercy. 2 caciques agreed to the truce. In the second battle in Oaxaca, the natives lost, and in the Battle of Jacueca, the Spanish put an end to the Taino rebellion. The remaining survivors fled to the mountainous regions, where they continued with sporadic attacks. These attempts, although powerful, were no match for the superior technology of the Spaniards. If not by exploitation, they would die of disease. The Taínos were vulnerable to Old World diseases since they did not have immunity to them. Throughout the island, illnesses spread rapidly, such as smallpox, chickenpox, and measles, killing thousands of native population. As populations dwindled by 30 years after the encounter, more than a third of all Taínos had perished. According to historian Francisco Moscoso, the natives at the time of Columbus's arrival amounted to about 110,000. Other historians now estimate many more.
Realmente, por lo que yo he podido estudiar, un impacto grande en los nativos. Se estima que cuando llegaron los españoles a América habían sobre 200,000 nativos en Puerto Rico, y en 30 o 40 años solamente quedaba el 3 al 5%.
However, by 1515, the Historic Bulletin of Puerto Rico stated that there were few Indians, not reaching 4,000, and many are left without slaves. They shall be reported to 35 neighbors in each town. Those who survived found a way to live with the Spanish. As more settlers arrived to the Spanish colony, they intermixed with the female natives. The Spanish, for the most part, did not bring their families. They came in search of gold and adventure. They began to intermix with Taino women, which was very typical throughout the Spanish colonies. A recent island-wide DNA study by Dr. Juan Martinez Cruzado revealed that the Taino ancestry is much more present among modern-day Puerto Ricans than previously believed. It was assumed that the Taino were extinct, whereas now some historians understand that this might be false. Dr. Martinez Cruzado stated that there was assimilation, but the people were not extinguished, since 61% of Puerto Ricans carried Taino genes, according to his study. Another study by the University of Puerto Rico in 1999 revealed similar results. From a number of 56 volunteers with Indo-American traits, 70% carried Indo-American genes. A second study by the University of Puerto Rico selected randomly 38 students, and 53% of the sample carried Indo-American DNA. These studies suggest, contrary to the extinction theory, that assimilation was greater than believed. This was one of the greatest long-term impacts of the initial turning point of colonization, the intermixing of different peoples that would lead to the emergence of an entire new culture. However, some historians disagree with those studies and believe there was extinction, since those studies were performed on a small population sample.
A mí me parece que lo que hubo un exterminio, donde los nativos mueren por unas causas justificadas que tienen que ver mayormente con las enfermedades que trajeron los españoles, el excesivo trabajo en la recolección de oro, entre otras razones, como el suicidio, que era muy común entre los nativos.
Regardless of the different theories about the Taínos' eventual fate, it is certain that the impact of colonization affected the Taínos negatively. The fate of the Taino people had a tragic outcome after the arrival of the Spanish. However, their cultural legacy remains an important element of Puerto Rican culture, which is evident in the language, music, and art. These cultural elements, combined with other aspects from Spain and later Africa, helped mold the Puerto Rican culture of today. Nevertheless, a series of unfortunate events led to the demise of the original Taino society, providing a glimpse of the tragic outcome of the Spanish colonization of Puerto Rico, a story that would be repeated throughout the European colonies of the New World, changing the face of the Western Hemisphere forever.